My in-laws moved into our house temporarily, then put it up for sale behind my back. If you'd told me a year ago that my in-laws would try to sell my house behind my back, I might have laughed, tight-lipped and tired, and said, that sounds like something Janice would dream up. But even in my worst-case scenarios, I never imagined just how far she'd go. It all started with a sentence that now echoes in my head like a warning. Just 1 month, Megan. I swear. Eric said it so gently, like he was asking if we could adopt a stray cat. We just need to help them out. The contractors totally botched their bathroom, and the fumes are awful. Mom says she's been getting migraines. I was standing in the kitchen, freshly off a full day of Zoom calls and HR fires, clutching my lukewarm coffee. My brain was still in work mode, and the last thing I expected was a surprise guest request, let alone for his parents. I raised an eyebrow. Eric, you know how I feel about house guests. This place isn't a hotel. I know, he said, nodding quickly. And it's just for a month. 1 month. They'll stay in the guest room, maybe help out a bit. It'll be fine. I paused, calculating. The house, my house, was my sanctuary. I bought it on my own when Eric was between jobs. Every detail, every couch cushion, every candle scent had been handpicked by me. It was warm, modern, soft, my independence in architectural form. Fine, I said slowly, but there are rules. Guest bedroom and living room only. No reorganizing, no cleaning marathons, and definitely no decorating. Eric grinned like a kid who just got out of trouble. Of course. You're the boss. He always said that, even though we both knew that when it came to his parents, I never really was. They arrived on a sunny Saturday afternoon, rolling up in their faded green Toyota like they were moving in for the summer, not staying just a month. Janice stepped out in a pastel peach pantsuit, makeup flawless, hair blown out like she was about to go on a talk show. Megan, she sang, arms wide. You look so thin. Are you eating enough? You work too hard, I can tell. I forced a smile as she hugged me, her perfume wrapping around my throat like invisible hands. Robert gave me a polite nod and a thin-lipped smile. Quiet as always, but watchful, like he was silently taking inventory of the furniture. They brought pies, of course, and houseplants, and throw pillows I never asked for. Just little things to brighten up the space, Janice said cheerfully, placing a vase of hydrangeas on my kitchen island like she owned the granite. The first few days weren't awful. She cooked. A lot. Chicken casseroles, lasagnas, her famous lemon bars. And she cleaned, in a way that was more correctional than helpful. Like I'd been doing it wrong this whole time. Oh, I just shifted the couch a little, she said one morning when I came downstairs and found the entire living room rearranged. Now the energy flows better. I stared at my favorite reading chair, now tucked awkwardly near the window. It was fine where it was, I said tightly. But doesn't it feel lighter now? She asked with a smug smile. Robert agrees, don't you, dear? Robert just nodded once and kept sipping his tea. By the end of the second week I was waking up at 6:30 a.m. to the sound of the vacuum cleaner. I like to get started early, Janice said, fluffing the curtains. Helps me feel productive. I said nothing. I just stared at the new lace-trimmed dish towels hanging in my kitchen, the ones embroidered with J&R, Janice and Robert, not Megan and Eric. It wasn't just the towels. It was the way she started referring to the house as the family home. The way she corrected me in front of Eric when I set the thermostat. The way she sighed, loudly, every time I microwaved dinner instead of making it from scratch. It's just her way, Eric told me one night when I vented. She doesn't mean anything by it. You know how she is. I know exactly how she is, I snapped. And I want to know when this 1 month ends. Eric looked uncomfortable. They're just getting settled. Let's not rush them. The contractors said a few more weeks. I stared at him, cold rising in my chest. This isn't what I agreed to. He reached for my hand. I'll talk to them. I promise. Just be patient a little longer, okay? Patience. Right. I wish I'd known then. The month wasn't even close to being over. In fact, it hadn't even begun. 3 months. 3 months since Janice and Robert had moved in. And it felt like the house, my house, was slowly slipping through my fingers, like sand in the wind. At first it was subtle. A few extra throw pillows here, a misplaced vase there. But now? Now my once warm and inviting home was beginning to look like a museum for the Johnsons, a collection of their old faded things. The family photos were framed and scattered in places I never would have put them. Pictures of Eric as a child with his parents, his grinning face in front of their old house. Not mine. The living room, which had once been my sanctuary with its carefully selected clean lines and soft accents, was now a strange combination of mismatched furniture. Janice had replaced the contemporary couch with a bulky, floral armchair that had been sitting in the corner of the basement for years. She swore it was vintage, but it was just ugly. "You'll love this one," she said when she placed it there, watching me as I gave her a tight-lipped smile. "It's a little more homey." I didn't want homey. I wanted my home. The kitchen was the worst. It had always been my pride. The island where I'd spent hours cooking, the spices arranged just so. But now? Janice had taken over. She moved the utensils, shifted the fridge magnets, rearranged the pantry, and kept saying things like, "Oh, sweetie, you're just too busy to manage all this." And that wasn't even the worst part. Janice had a new project, my bedroom. I walked in one afternoon, expecting some quiet after work, but instead, I found her moving my bed. My bed. She was fiddling with the headboard, sliding it a few inches to the left, muttering to herself. "Don't worry, Megan," she said, looking up with that saccharine smile of hers. "It'll feel so much better like this." I just felt like it needed a little more space. I blinked. "Why did you move it?" "It's just easier this way," she replied. Her voice was calm, as if it made perfect sense. Like my room, my space was never really mine. It wasn't just her pushing things around. Robert had taken it one step further. Without telling me, he'd put an old wardrobe in the garage for storage. A wardrobe that didn't belong to him, nor did it belong in my garage. But there it was, blocking my tools and car, tucked away like an uninvited guest. "You can't just do that," I snapped when I saw it. Robert grunted, his usual response to anything that could be considered a confrontation. "It's just some old stuff. It was in the way. You don't need it, do you?" My jaw clenched, but before I could respond, Eric appeared in the doorway. "What's going on?" "Your dad moved something into my garage without asking." I bit back the anger that was starting to bubble up. Eric just looked uncomfortable. "Oh well. It's no big deal. They're just trying to help. It's easier this way, don't you think?" I couldn't believe my ears. "Easier? For who?" "It's my house, Eric." I felt my chest tighten as the words left my mouth, the weight of the situation finally sinking in. I wasn't just upset about a wardrobe in my garage. I was upset because this was the third time I'd come home to find something rearranged, moved, or changed without my consent. Eric just gave me that apologetic look, the one he always used when his parents overstepped, and said, Maybe you just need to let it go for now. They've been through a lot, you know? Their house is being renovated. They need a little comfort." Comfort. I bit my lip hard to stop myself from saying something I'd regret. I wanted to scream, "It's my house, my comfort, my space." But instead, I just stared at him, feeling the familiar knot in my stomach tighten. "Eric, we need to set boundaries," I said, my voice quieter now but firm. "This needs to stop. We need to talk about when they're leaving." His face softened, and for a moment, I saw the man I had married. "Megan, please," he said gently. "Can we just wait a little longer? Just a few more weeks?" "It's not that bad, is it?" It was the same old story, just a few more weeks. Always one more excuse, one more delay. "No," I said, my voice cutting through the tension. "I've been patient long enough. We agreed on 1 month. It's been 3. 3? Eric sighed, his shoulders slumping. "I'll talk to them, I promise." But I knew what that meant. Nothing would change. He'd say the words, but he wouldn't make them stick. He was too weak to push back against his parents. Too afraid to cause any conflict. I nodded, but inside, I was already planning my next move. Because if Eric wouldn't stand up for me, I would stand up for myself. It was a Thursday morning when I received the call that would change everything. I was standing in the kitchen, still in my pajamas, coffee in hand, scrolling through emails, It had been a long week at work, and the last thing I wanted was another reminder of the chaos slowly taking over my home. As I skimmed through the subject lines, my phone buzzed with an incoming call from an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment. But then I answered, figuring it was just another sales pitch. "Hello?" I said, trying to sound more awake than I felt. "Good morning. Is this Megan?" The voice on the other end was smooth, professional. Too professional, in fact. "Yes, this is Megan." "Who is this?" "This is Sandra Klein. I'm a real estate agent with Johnson & Company. I'm just calling to confirm the final details of the sale of your property on Oakwood Drive. Everything is on track for closing next week." I froze. My hand gripped the phone tighter, the words barely sinking in. "Sale? My house? The one I had worked so hard for? What are you talking about? There's been some mistake. My house isn't for sale." There was a brief pause, then Sandra's voice came back, calm and matter-of-fact. "I have a notarized power of attorney with your signature, Megan. It was signed last week. Your husband and his parents are handling the transaction?" I felt my chest tighten. The world seemed to tilt. My house was being sold? And my signature was on the paperwork? "Can you send me the documents?" I demanded, barely able to keep my voice steady. "I need to see them." "Of course," Sandra said. "I'll forward them to you right away." I hung up, my fingers trembling. I couldn't breathe. I had to sit down. The kitchen felt colder now, like the walls were closing in around me. I set my phone down on the counter and stared at it for a moment, my mind racing. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real, but deep down, I knew it was. My phone pinged with an email. I opened it, and there they were, the documents. A power of attorney, my name printed clearly at the top. I scrolled down, my eyes scanning the paper until I reached the signature line. It wasn't my signature. I felt a sickening wave of nausea roll through me as I stared at the name I didn't write. The curves and loops that weren't mine. The date on the document was the week I'd been away on a business trip, barely home long enough to breathe, let alone sign anything. That's when I knew. It wasn't just a mistake. It was deliberate. I ran my hands over my face, trying to calm my racing thoughts. Eric. He had to know. There was no other explanation. The kitchen, once so comforting, now felt alien. The bright tiles, the perfectly organized counter, even the scent of fresh coffee felt off, like something that didn't belong to me anymore. I took a deep breath and called Eric. He picked up on the first ring. "Hey babe, what's up?" His voice was casual, too casual. "Eric," I said, my voice steady, but laced with a fury I wasn't sure I could control. "I just got off the phone with a realtor. They're selling the house." Behind my back? There was a long silence. Too long. "Wait, what?" he finally said, feigning shock. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the power of attorney they have in my name. That you signed them to use. The house is being sold, Eric." I didn't know anything about that," he said quickly, his voice rising in panic. "I swear, Megan. I didn't." But I could tell. I could hear it in his voice. He was lying. He was hiding something. I pressed on, refusing to let him deflect. "Then explain this to me, Eric. How is it possible that someone could forge my signature? How is it that I'm only hearing about this now?" He paused, and for a moment, I thought I heard a nervous breath on the other end. I don't know, Megan. I'm as surprised as you are. This is crazy." I didn't buy it. Not for a second. "I'll need to see the documents," I said, my voice cold now. "Everything. The contract, the deed, all of it. I'm not going to let this slide." There was another silence. And then he finally muttered, "Okay, I'll look into it." But I could already tell that Eric wasn't going to help me. He wasn't going to make things right. If anything, he was hoping this would blow over and I would just let it go. But I couldn't. Not this time. As I ended the call, I knew what had to be done. If they were going to pull something like this, it meant they had nothing to lose. But I did. And I wasn't about to lose my house. Not without a fight. I hadn't been able to sit still since the phone call with Sandra. My mind raced, and every minute felt like a ticking bomb. I knew I needed to act fast, but the weight of everything pressing down on me made it hard to think straight. The house, my house, wasn't just being sold. It was slipping through my fingers in a way that felt like a personal betrayal. I wasn't going to let it happen. The first thing I did was call Jordan Ellis. Jordan and I had worked together years ago at a legal firm before I transitioned into human resources. He was brilliant, sharp, charismatic, and a little too easy to talk to. We'd shared countless late nights reviewing case files and discussing the law over coffee. We'd even shared a few moments outside the office, though I'd never taken any of it seriously. He was a great guy, but I was focused on building my own life. Now, after all these years, Jordan was still in law, and I needed him more than ever. It wasn't about romantic nostalgia. It was about strategy. And Jordan was the kind of person who could make things happen. I arranged to meet him at a small cafe downtown, a neutral ground where we could talk without any prying eyes. When I saw him walk in, dressed casually in a dark blazer and jeans, his easy smile still had the same effect on me, comforting and familiar. He waved me over to a quiet corner, and as I sat down, he immediately placed his hands on the table, leaning in with concern. "Megan, it's been too long," he said with a soft chuckle, his eyes lighting up when he saw me. But then he saw my face, and the laughter faded. "What's going on? You look like you're carrying the weight of the world." I didn't waste time with small talk. "I need your help, Jordan." "It's urgent." Jordan nodded, his expression turning serious as he folded his arms. "Of course. What happened?" I took a deep breath. "Eric's parents. They've forged a power of attorney with my name. They're selling my house without my consent, and I think Eric knew about it." His eyes narrowed. That's a serious offense, Megan. Forging signatures? That's criminal. You could get them on fraud charges easily, but I'll need to see the documents." I pulled my phone from my bag and showed him the power of attorney. The forged signature clearly visible. Jordan's face hardened as he studied it. "This is bad," he said quietly. "Whoever did this didn't even bother trying to make it look convincing." "It's definitely forged." I exhaled, feeling a surge of relief mixed with anxiety. I wasn't crazy. They really had done it. "I knew it," I whispered, more to myself than to him. "We can take action," Jordan said, sitting back in his chair. "But we need proof, Megan. We'll need to gather everything. Surveillance footage, emails, anything that can connect them to the crime. But trust me, if you want to take them down, you need to be systematic about this." I nodded. "I can do that." Jordan leaned forward again, his voice low but steady. "And I'll help you, every step of the way. But I need to warn you, this is going to get messy. It's not just going to be you against them. You're going up against people with a lot of influence, and they're not going to back down." "I know what I'm up against," I said, feeling the weight of the words settle in. "But I'm not backing down either." Jordan's lips curled into a small, approving smile. "I like this version of you, Megan. It's been a while since I've seen you this determined." I shook my head, letting out a small laugh. "It's not about liking it. It's about doing what's right." We discussed the next steps. I needed to get access to the cameras around the house, start collecting emails and messages related to the forged document, and begin documenting everything that was happening. But there was one more thing I had in mind, something that would turn the tables completely. The next day, I put my plan into action. I knew Janice wouldn't let up. She was too controlling, and if I could catch her in the act, it might just be the leverage I needed. I wrote a letter, one that would get her attention. I addressed it to the new homeowner, just to see how she would react. I knew Janice would believe she had won, and I wanted to watch her fall into the trap. I carefully placed the letter on the kitchen table, making sure it was visible when she came downstairs. I set up a camera to record, just in case she said something incriminating. By mid-morning, Janice appeared in the kitchen, her usual gliding walk making her look like she owned the place. Her eyes immediately locked onto the letter on the table. I pretended to be busy in the other room, my ears straining for her reaction. Her footsteps approached the table, and I heard the sound of paper rustling. Then, in a voice that was far too calm, she said, "Oh, Megan, you always think you can stop us. But let me remind you of something." I stepped into the doorway, keeping my voice even, but feeling the heat rising in my chest. What do you mean? Janice didn't even flinch. She turned to face me, her expression a mixture of smug satisfaction and condescension. You've always been just a temporary fixture in Eric's life, Megan. You were never meant to be here for good. We're just saving him from your control. I could feel my blood boil, but I held it together. The words felt like daggers, but I wasn't going to let her see how much they hurt. Is that so? I said quietly, my voice colder than I intended. Yes, she replied, almost too casually. We're doing what's best for him. You'll see, eventually. I stood still, letting the words sink in, knowing the camera had caught everything. It was the perfect response to put her in her place. That evening, I sat with Jordan in his cozy office, surrounded by shelves of law books and case files, the familiar scent of ink and paper bringing back memories of the work I used to love. Jordan was already looking over the footage from the kitchen, his brow furrowed. I'm not sure how much this will help legally, he said, pausing the video. But it'll definitely help your case when we show the manipulation and gaslighting she's been pulling. I nodded, feeling the weight of the fight ahead of me. But for the first time in weeks, I felt something else, a spark. I was going to take my house back, and this time I wasn't going to lose. The tension in the house was palpable. It had been building for months, but now it was all coming to a head. The quiet, passive atmosphere had shattered, replaced by the chaos that had been lurking beneath the surface. I stood in the living room, the place that had once felt like my sanctuary, my personal haven, now the battleground for a fight I never wanted. Eric was pacing by the door, his face pale and his eyes wide with panic. He was trying, desperately trying, not to take sides. But there was no neutral ground left. The battle lines had been drawn, and it was clear that this wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about loyalty, trust, and how far he was willing to let his mother control everything. I watched him, arms crossed, calm on the outside, though the storm inside me was raging. Janice was in the corner, frantically wringing her hands, her face flushed with anger. Her voice rose shrill and cutting, as she pointed at me. You're ruining everything, Megan. Do you understand that? You're tearing our family apart. All we ever did was try to help you, and this is how you repay us? By trying to throw us out of a house we've helped you build? She was almost crying, her words laced with venom. I'm not trying to tear anything apart, Janice, I said, my voice even, controlled. I'm trying to protect what's mine. What's ours? Eric shifted uncomfortably, his gaze flitting between his mother and me, as though he were still trying to figure out a way to stay out of it. They're just old, Megan. They just wanted to help. You know how it is. They didn't mean... I cut him off, the anger I'd been holding back for months finally breaking through. Stop making excuses for them, Eric. This isn't about age, this is about control, and you've let them walk all over us. He flinched at my words, and for a moment, I saw something like guilt flicker in his eyes. But it quickly vanished. Megan, please. Can't we just talk about this calmly? You're overreacting. This isn't the end of the world. I took a deep breath, my hands shaking slightly, but I refused to show him how much this was hurting me. No, Eric, I'm done talking. You need to make a choice. His head jerked up, and for the first time I saw real fear in his eyes. What do you mean? What choice? I mean, you need to choose, I said, stepping toward him slowly, each word carrying the weight of months of frustration. You're either with me or you're with them. I can't keep fighting this alone, Eric. Either you stand by me or you go with your parents. But I can't do this anymore. I won't. There was a long, agonizing silence as he stood there, frozen. His lips parted as if he were about to say something, but no words came. I could see his mind racing, trying to figure out a way to keep everyone happy, trying to hold on to that illusion of neutrality he so desperately craved. But it wasn't possible anymore. Janice had been watching us, her eyes narrowing as she saw Eric's hesitation. You're really going to choose her over your own family, Eric? She shouted, stepping forward. She's brainwashed you. She's manipulating you, just like she always does. Her voice cracked as she spoke, and I could see the tears welling up in her eyes, but there was no sympathy in me anymore. No more pity for her manipulations. I stepped back from Eric, shaking my head, my heart pounding. It's not about picking sides, Eric. It's about standing up for what's right, for us. You don't get to keep hiding behind their excuses. Not anymore. I reached into my bag and pulled out the documents I'd gotten from my lawyer, the ones that would put an end to all of this. The court order. The injunction preventing the sale of the house. I handed it to Eric, watching as he took it, his fingers trembling. Look at it, Eric. This is our home. I've fought for it, I've worked for it, and I won't let them take it from me. Eric didn't even look at the paper at first. He just stood there, his face slack, as though he couldn't process it. Then, after a long, painful pause, he finally spoke, his voice low and defeated. I don't know what to do, Megan. I could feel the tears rising in my throat, but I swallowed them down. This wasn't about my emotions anymore. It wasn't about begging him to choose me. It was about standing firm. I'm done waiting for you to decide, Eric, I said softly, my voice thick but steady. You have to pick. But don't make me make it for you. There was no dramatic confrontation, no shouting or slamming doors. It was quieter than I expected. Eric turned away from me, muttering something I couldn't quite make out, and walked toward the door. Janice was right behind him, her voice shrill and desperate. Eric, don't leave me here with her. Don't you see what she's doing? But Eric didn't turn back. And just like that, he was gone. The door slammed shut behind him, and for the first time in what felt like forever, the house was silent. I stood in the middle of the living room, surrounded by the things that once brought me comfort. The furniture I had carefully chosen, the paintings on the walls, the rug that had been my grandmother's. But now, it all felt so empty. The walls, once filled with warmth and love, felt like they were closing in on me. I had made my stand. And now, I was alone. The house felt different now, cleaner, lighter, as if it had shed the weight of all the memories that weren't mine to begin with. The renovations I'd done, repainting the walls, updating the furniture, had brought a fresh energy into every room. It was my space now. Completely mine. I stood in the kitchen, wiping down the counters for the last time, scrubbing away the remnants of a life that had no place here anymore. No more photos of Eric's parents. No more remnants of their past lingering in the corners. Everything had been either sold or given away. The house was empty, but it wasn't. Not for me. Jordan had been a steady presence in all of this. At first, I'd needed him for legal advice. Now, I saw him as a friend. Someone who'd helped me stand tall when I wanted nothing more than to collapse. His support had been invaluable. He'd stayed up late, filing documents, making phone calls, ensuring every little piece of the case was in place. And finally, the moment of reckoning had come. The court had ruled in my favor. The forged power of attorney had been dismissed. Janice and Robert had received a restraining order, preventing them from making any further claims on the house or from attempting to sell it again. The satisfaction of hearing that verdict was sweet. But it wasn't what made me feel whole. What made me feel whole was knowing that I had fought for what was mine. I had taken control of my life, my home, and my future. And in the end, I wasn't going to need anyone to tell me where I belonged. Eric had tried to come back. He'd called, texted, begged even, but I hadn't replied. He'd shown up at the door the day after the court decision, standing with flowers in his hands, and that apologetic look on his face. I'd seen the desperation in his eyes, but it was too late. I wasn't angry anymore. There was nothing left to be angry about. He had made his choices, and I had made mine. I stood by the window, watching him from the living room as he stood at the door. His hands trembled slightly as he reached up to ring the doorbell. I didn't move. I didn't even flinch. The doorbell rang once, twice. But I stayed still. His voice came through the door, weak, as he tried to convince me to open it. Megan, please, can we talk? I made a mistake. I could almost feel his words through the door, trying to crack the walls I'd built up. But there was no place for him in this new life I was building. With a steady hand, I pulled the curtains shut, blocking out the view. It was over. I turned around and there was Jordan, leaning casually against the doorframe, watching me with that familiar, reassuring smile. "Do you ever think about what could have been?" I asked, my voice soft but resolute. Jordan shook his head. "No. The past doesn't have a place here anymore, Megan. What's important is what's ahead. What you're building. I smiled, the weight of everything that had happened lifting off my shoulders. I don't need any of them to feel at home, Jordan. Later that afternoon, I sat on the veranda with a steaming cup of coffee in my hands. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm orange glow across the sky. The silence of the evening was peaceful, a quiet contrast to the storm of emotions I'd navigated these past months. Jordan sat beside me, a comfortable silence between us. I could hear the distant sound of birds calling to each other as the world settled into twilight. The house, now fully mine, felt more like home than it ever had. They tried to sell my house, I said quietly, looking out over the horizon. But I sold the idea that I needed any of them to feel at home. Jordan chuckled softly beside me, his voice a calm, steady presence in the quiet. That's the thing about ownership, Megan. It's not just about the property. It's about taking control of your life, your decisions, and your peace. I took a deep breath, the weight of the past few months settling into a sense of finality. I'm finally home. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it.